Welcome to Pen and Perspective, where the story always knows more than it's telling. Every word is intentional, every silence holds a truth. Let's get into it. I kept the insurance money. They didn't help while he was alive. Everybody keeps telling me the same thing, that the money should have been shared. That family is supposed to come together after something like that I'm being selfish. But the one thing nobody wants to talk about is where everybody was when my husband was still alive. Because now everybody has opinions. Now everybody has advice. Now everybody has hands out. But when he was here, when things were actually hard, those same people were nowhere to be found. My husband was sick for almost a year. It started with what we thought was something small, just fatigue, a couple of doctor visits, then tests, then more tests. And suddenly, our lives turned into hospital rooms, pharmacy receipts, and conversations with doctors who kept saying things like, "We're going to try." If you've ever been through something like that with somebody you love, you know how fast everything changes. Your routine disappears, your money disappears, and your energy disappears. Everything becomes about keeping that person going one more day, one more treatment, and one more appointment. At the beginning, people showed up, family stopped by, everybody said the same things. Let us know if you need anything. We're here for you. But you learn pretty quickly that those words don't always mean much. Because when the bills started piling up, when the treatments got harder, when the nights got longer, the phone stopped ringing. Nobody was asking what the copay looked like. Nobody was offering to sit with him so I could get some sleep. Nobody was showing up to help lift him out of bed on the days he couldn't stand up on his own. It was just me. Me driving him to appointments. Me sitting in waiting rooms. Me figuring out how to stretch money that was already disappearing faster than it was coming in. His sister called once in a while. His cousin checked in every couple months. But the day-to-day reality of what we were going through, that belonged to me. And him. So when he passed, it wasn't just grief. It was exhaustion. It was silence in a house that had been full of machines and medication schedules. It was waking up in the morning and realizing there was nobody left to take care of. The days after he passed were a blur. People like to say family comes together when someone dies, and sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's just a lot of phone calls and sympathy messages. His sister came by the first day, brought food, hugged me, cried a little. His brother called that night and said if I needed anything, just let him know. A couple cousins sent texts. Thinking about you, stay strong, that kind of thing. And I appreciated it. I really did. But grief has a way of stretching time. Like, you start noticing who's actually there and who just checks the box. Because once the first couple days passed, everybody went back to their lives. The house got quiet again. The meals stopped showing up. The calls became short texts. The help people said they were ready to give never really materialized. I handled the funeral arrangements, the paperwork, the meetings where you sit there picking out caskets and music like you're planning some kind of event you never wanted to host. Everybody hugged me at the funeral. Everybody told stories about him. Everybody said how much they loved him. And I believed them. But when the service ended and people drove home, I was the one who walked back into that empty house. Time passed like that. Just quiet. Just me learning how to live in a space where his voice used to be. About 2 weeks after the funeral, the insurance check came. It wasn't millions like people imagine when they hear life insurance, but it was more than enough to breathe again. Enough to pay off the medical bills that had been stacking up. Enough to make sure I wasn't drowning after everything we'd just been through. And for a few days it was quiet. Then people started calling. At first it was subtle. His brother asked how I was doing financially. His aunt mentioned how hard things had been for everybody. His cousin said something about the family pulling together. I didn't think much of it until his sister came over one afternoon. She sat down at my kitchen table and started talking about how families are supposed to support each other during times like this. And then she finally said it. She said, "You know that money should really help everybody." I asked her what she meant. And she said something that honestly surprised me. And she said, "Well, it's not like that money is only yours." She said the insurance came from him, from the family, from the life he built before me, and that it would only be fair to spread some of it around. I just sat there listening to her talk, and all I could think about was the last year of my life, The hospital rooms and the pharmacy lines, the nights I spent sleeping in a chair next to his bed. I asked her one question: where were all of you when he was alive? She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me like I had said something rude. Then she said something that made it clear exactly how she saw the situation. She said, "That's different." "Not to me, it wasn't," I said. "Not even a little." I told her the truth because when he needed people, when things were actually difficult, when help would have meant something, nobody was asking how to share the responsibility then. Nobody was volunteering to take shifts at the hospital. Nobody was offering to split the bills. She was quiet for a while, trying to figure out a different angle. Then she finally said, "The right thing would be to share it." I said, "I kept him alive as long as I could. I paid those bills. I carried him without any help from the very people talking to me now about family. So yes, the money is mine." That didn't go over well. And the wild part is that wasn't even the worst conversation I had about that money. Apparently, somebody in the family started a group text. Not with me in it, but one of the cousins showed it to me later. They were discussing what they called the situation. My name came up a lot. People saying I was forgetting where my husband came from. One person even said some shit like she wouldn't have that money if it wasn't for him. Which is true, but the part they skipped over is that year wouldn't have been so damn hard if they'd shown up for him. That part of the story didn't make it into their group chat. Because it's easy to divide money, it's harder to divide responsibility. People who hadn't spoken to me in months were blowing up my phone, not to check on me, to explain what they thought I should do with the money. One of his cousins even told me that keeping it all made me look greedy. Greedy. After the year I just had, they know they have some fucking nerve. The funny thing is, none of them are arguing about whether the insurance money exists. They're arguing about whether I deserve to keep it. But the way I see it, that money didn't show up because of them. It showed up because of him and the life we were actually living together. And the truth is, if any of them had been there during that year, if they had helped carry even a little of what we went through, maybe this conversation would be different. But here we are. So now everybody's saying I'm turning my back on his family. Maybe they're right. But the way I see it, family isn't just who shows up after the check arrives. Family is who shows up when things are hard. And the people who showed up then were already in that house with me. About 2 weeks later, his brother came by. Didn't even have the decency to call first and just showed up at the house like he had some kind of claim to the place. He sat at the same kitchen table his sister had a while back, looked around the house for a minute like he was taking inventory. Then he said, "You know, people are talking." I said, "Yes." He said the family felt like I was shutting everybody out, like I was acting like they didn't matter. Then he finally said what he really came to say. He said, "That money could help a lot of people right now." I asked him the same question I asked his sister: where were all of you when he was alive? He didn't like that either. He said something about how people have their own lives, their own responsibilities, their own problems. And I told him, exactly. Everybody has their own life until there's money involved. Now suddenly everybody remembers their family. He left not long after that. And from what I hear, the story that's going around now is that I let money ruin relationships. That grief must have changed me. Maybe it did. Because grief has a way of showing you who was actually standing next to you when things mattered. And who only shows up once the hard part is already over. And the truth is, if my husband had been sitting at that table when his sister said all of that, the conversation would have ended a lot faster. Because he knew exactly what that year looked like. And he knew who was there. He knew who wasn't. There were nights when he'd look at me from that hospital bed and say the same thing over and over again. "Thank you for not leaving." He said it like he expected I might. Like maybe this was too much for one person to handle alone. But here's the thing. When you love somebody, you don't think about leaving. You think about getting through the next day, the next appointment, the next treatment. So when people say that insurance money came from him, they're right. It did. But it also came from the life we were living together. The one where we carried that year as a team. even when the rest of the world disappeared. So, yeah, I kept the insurance money not because I'm greedy, not because I don't care about his family, but because for an entire year, when keeping him alive took everything we had, the responsibility belonged to me. And now that he's gone, so's the check. You've been listening to Pen and Perspective, where some people regret the fallout, some regret the decision, and some don't regret anything at all. I'm Money.They. Before I put my pen down, let me ask you something. Whose perspective should we hear next?